All right, this is an example when the right of use asset and the lease liability differ. And it turns out that this happens sometimes. Normally they go together over time, but they don't always follow exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this example. Let's walk through it. It says at January 1, year 1, Hotel Capme leased restaurant equipment from Rhombus Corporation with an 8-year lease agreement. The lease agreement specified annual payments of $23,000 beginning January 1, year 1, the beginning of the lease, and at each December 31 thereafter through year 7. The equipment was acquired recently by Rhombus at a cost of $175,000, its fair value, and was expected to have a useful life of 13 years with no salvage value at the end of its life. Because the lease term is only 8 years, the asset does have an expected residual value at the end of the lease term of $90,995. Rhombus expects a 9% return on its lease investments, and that's stated, and that so the lessee can use that number. By this arrangement, the lease is deemed to be an operating lease because it fails all 5 of the FAS 13 criteria. Under the requirement, first requirement is what will be the effect of the lease on Hotel Capme's earnings for the first year, ignore taxes. And number 2, what will be the balances in the balance sheet accounts related to the lease at the end of the first year of Hotel Capme. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this. And the first thing I like to do is recognize that we have a payment and do a timeline here. January 1, year 1. And then we have December 31, year 1. And that December 31, it's going to be, the payments are going to be after that, and then year 2. And those payments are going to be for a total of 8 payments, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so those are going to be, I'll just put it in there, December 31, and I'll put December 31, year 1, and that's our timeline. It's at the beginning of the year and then all of these years. And each one of those is going to be 23,000. And I'm going to copy like this. And what we have is a present value of an annuity, where I is equal to 9, N equals 7 future payments. Okay, so we're doing it on January 1. We have 7 future payments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. N is 7. And so that's going to be a factor of I9 N7. That's this number right here. And I'm going to put some digits in here, like that. And we're going to multiply that by the payment amount. And that payment is this 23,000. We multiply that here, and I get 115,758. Add the initial cash payment, 1/1 year 1, and that's going to be this 23,000 on the very beginning, there's no discount for that. And the total present value of payments is the total of these two, 138,758. And then the second step is we're going to record these transactions, but we're going to need an amortization table. And I'm going to do it as a, we're going to start out with date and the beginning balance plus 9% interest. Oh, we want that. Minus the payment is the principal reduction. And the ending balance. And so we have here on 1/1, year one, the beginning balance was the 138,758 here. We're going to add the 9% interest times 0.09, 12,488. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Back up there. We have the 138,950. We have the beginning balance of 138,758, but we make a payment on the first day, so that the principal reduction, which is the combination of these two, is is equal to plus a negative number, and this is going to be 0%. Zero. We have the reduction, principal reduction, and then we're going to take this 138 plus the principal reduction. And then on 12/31 year one, this is going to, beginning balance is going to be the ending balance from before. The 9% interest, the payment is going to be minus 23,000. The principal reduction is going to be the total of those, equals this plus the negative number. And then the ending balance is going to be equal to the 115,000 plus the negative number, 103,000. Over here, this is going to be 12/31 year two. And I can take those two, and we want to take that out to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can take these formulas, copy them down to here, and that's our amortization schedule. All right, so let's put this all into the general journal for an operating lease. This is Hotel Capme general journal. We'll put that, center it, make it pretty, with the date over here, account, debits, and credits. Put a line there, and we're going to have 1/1 year one, where we're going to have cash going out, I'll do that part first. Credit 23,000. I'm sorry, we're crediting, 23,000 for that initial payment. We're going to debit the right of use asset, and that's going to be equal to the present value of the lease payments. And then we're going to credit lease liability or lease payable for the difference, which is 138,758 minus the 23,000, which is the 115,758 present value of these future lease payments here. This is to record initial payment on long-term operating lease. At 12/31 year one, we're going to have a payment, cash, and that's going to be for 23,000. We're going to have interest expense, and that's going to come from the amortization schedule up above, equals at the end of the year the 9% interest, and this is going to be a debit to lease payable for the difference, equal 23,000 minus the interest expense to record year-end lease payment on operating lease. Then we're going to come along on 12/31 year one, and we're going to make an adjusting entry. And the adjusting entry looks like this. We're going to have amortization expense, and that amortization expense is going to equal whatever the difference is between the cash that we paid over that lease term. When we take the straight line amortization of that lease, 23,000, minus what we've already recorded as an expense under interest expense. And so that's going to be equal to 23,000 minus the 10,000 interest expense, or 12,582. And we're going to credit right of use asset for that amount to record amortization of ROU asset using long-term operating lease rule. And let me show you that long-term operating lease rule. If we go back over to here, and it says finance lease, we set it up as a right of use asset that gets amortized as if it were equipment itself that gets depreciated, plus the financing of that right, that is the legal obligation that has, it's a debt that we pay interest on. That's finance lease. In an operating lease, which by the way is not used for IFRS purposes, only in the United States, lease expense is reported in a manner designed to mirror straight line rental of the asset during the lease term. That is, rent expense should be equal to what the straight line rent should be. In this case, 23,000. The way the lessee accomplishes that is to follow determined interest using the amortization method, or the amortization table, and then to determine amortization of the right of use asset as the amount needed to cause the total lease expense, that is interest plus amortization, to be an equal straight line amount over the lease term. In other words, the lessee determines interest the normal way and then plugs the right of use asset amortization, whatever amount is needed for interest plus amortization to equal the straight line lease payment. So all we're doing is making that amortization equal to whatever's necessary to get to the total expense on the lease, being the straight line normal rent expense. And so when we go over here, we put this into the T account, and I've done it here already. We have the original lease payable, 115,000 credit, and that goes here. We're going to debit the 12,582, and so our lease liability is 103,176. That's because we have, and it's lower than the right of use asset. The right of use asset is 138,758 minus this credit here of 12,582. So we have an asset that's higher than the lease liability. And that's because we prepaid that lease, we paid it in advance, and we have an asset that's a bit higher than the lease liability. Our lease expense is the total of the interest expense, which is N22 here, and the amortization expense here. And the total of that is 23,000. The right of use asset is the 126,172, and the lease liability at 12/31 year one is 103,176. And that's what we needed to answer this. What will be the effect of the lease on Hotel Capmate's earnings? Well, it's going to be 23,000. The sum of the interest expense and the amortization expense, 23,000, which equals the straight line of the rent, just as if it was rent expense over the life of the asset, straight line. Right of use asset, 126,176, and the lease liability, 103,176. There you have this problem. Okay. And that gets us to the end of this example. That gets us to the end of the example. Please use this approach when applying the operating lease rules.